Let's start this video out with some actual footage of Patriot missiles taking drones out over the military base that I was on in Saudi Arabia. These are actual videos taken by another contractor. All right, welcome back, and hello from Saudi. I've been asked some questions by some of the viewers specifically to talk about the safety of working in the Middle East. This is an excellent question, and I've had a chance to work in many different Middle Eastern countries, and so I think that it's quite relevant. We can even discuss some other areas of the world to work in as well, and what I experienced in my own, and then also heard from other contractors. And so we'll go over all of this. And once again, it's good to have you back, and we'll get into this in a moment. After years of military contracting overseas, and I'm getting ready to retire, I thought I would pass on the information that I learned over years of working abroad to inspire others to reach out, check out the world, see the jobs that are overseas, and learn something about yourself. Okay, and welcome back. So, let's talk a little bit about working in the Middle East and the idea of safety. There's a lot of news on what's happening around the world, and when it comes to the Middle East, generally the news will cover the most serious situations, the most dangerous situations. That's what's going to sell airtime, and that's what they're going to cover. And that can really give you this impression that taking a position in the Middle East is going to be extremely dangerous. It's going to be constantly watching for an attack, just waiting for something to happen, waiting for an explosive to go off, or something along those lines. It can give you that feeling because that is generally what comes to you in your local news or in any type of national or world news. The reality really is based upon what country you end up working in, what your circumstances are in that country as a job role, and also where in that country you work, because you have to remember there are countries that, like here working in Saudi Arabia where I am now, Saudi Arabia is massive. It is a massive country, and you could have an ongoing war going on against radicals that come over the border from Yemen on one area of the country. And then at the same time, in another area of the country, they could be hosting games from around the world, like having sports groups coming and doing some sort of tournament. It's just a massive nation, so you can't really just label something on the entire country. So let's start out. We'll go through the different countries that I've worked in. Let's start out with Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a country that has recently gone through a major drawdown. A lot of people have left Afghanistan, and I'll be doing a video about that upcoming, talking about the drawdown. But the real concerns that before I went to Afghanistan that I had was on explosive devices going off at some point, whether I was in a vehicle or whether I was on base or something like that. Now, the reality was I went through training to get into the country that discussed what to do in these circumstances, and this is part of what you will do if you do take a contractor job somewhere in the Middle East. You'll go through contractor training. I did a video on contractor training so that you can understand the steps involved and what's involved with that. I refer you back to that video to learn more. After going through that training, as well as the military training that I had behind me, when I went to Afghanistan, I found that it had many layers of security going through depending upon where you were going to work. Because I was working with network gear in the IT fields, I was sort of in a very secure area that I had to sometimes venture outside of. And then the most dangerous situations that I had to deal with was when I was taking helicopters from one base to another to do repair work. That was part of my job as well. When you're flying over Afghanistan in a helicopter, you just feel like you're just a big target. And in many cases you are. And there was incidents that occurred on base. For the most part, I was behind many layers of security with the exterior walls, interior walls. The way bases are set up in the Middle East is that you have your exterior walls and fence lines, and then you would have, even inside the base, you have different areas that are walled off inside the base, and they have their own security teams as well for whatever unit they're from or whatever country they're from or whatever the case might be. And pretty secure, the area that I was working in, pretty secure. As long as I wasn't traveling to other bases, I was in a pretty secure zone. And there were incidences that occurred just before I got to the Middle East. There was an explosive that went off in a galley. I call them a galley. I'm a former Navy guy, so I call them a galley, but the dining facilities. And this killed several people. Contractors have been killed, mostly in the security forces, contractors, but it can also happen if they're in some sort of support role. There were the bases that I worked on, we had rocket attacks, which were sort of a crude explosive device that really has no guidance. It just gets lit, it gets launched, and then it may be shot down by the phalanx systems on the base, which when those go off, there's no alarm, they just go off. And then the alarm comes like at the same time. But these are extremely loud, shocking incidents when these start going off. They can take something out right out of the sky. There were layers of radar facilities to watch the skies, looking for these rockets coming in. And then there were bunkers that we could go into when these alarms went off. When any type of incoming alarm went off, we would go into these bunkers. So you could be walking along, going maybe between where you sleep, which is a concrete building. In my case, for most part, it was. For other bases, it was a tent, which had no safety. And then maybe you were traveling to the dining facility, that alarm would go off. There would be concrete bunkers along the way that you would just get into right away. We also had an explosive go off that caused a fuel depot or some fuel barrels to explode. That was never explained as far as whether it was nefarious or just an accident of some kind, but that happened on one of the bases that I was on, and the rumor was that it was some sort of a device that went off, but they try to limit intelligence and stuff, while investigations are happening, and so you don't really always get all the information. Bases that I've been on were attacked by ground forces such as individuals or small teams that tried to make their way through, and then they would be fired at by the security teams. These are the kind of things that happened. Afghanistan is an active war zone, and it was when I was there. And there were retaliations that were launched, rocket launches that were sent out. Most of the bases had very powerful cannons, howitzer cannons that could return fire. And it was all guided by these radar systems that would see where a rocket would come from, that would pinpoint the location, and then you could return fire on that location. And so Afghanistan was an active war zone. There was an element of danger there, both on and off base. It's very real. And now I would say it's probably much worse. Now that basically there's only 2 American facilities left, Kabul, which is the embassies that are being protected, and then the international airport. So I would say it could be very dangerous there at this time. Moving on with Kuwait, when I worked in Kuwait, the security levels on base were very similar. They were very high security, where every person who went through was searched, every vehicle was searched. Large trucks would be searched and then put into what's called cooling off period where they would spend like 24 hours or whatever, who knows how long, I don't even know how long, just to sit there. They call it a cool off. Okay, they would sit there and to see if something would go off. That's the reality of it. Then once you're inside the base, high securities inside the base, armed personnel carry their weapons at all times. This is what you find often throughout the Middle East. People carry their weapons at all times. Wherever they are, even at the gym facility or at the dining facility, they take their weapons with them. And but we did not have those kind of incidents taking place. Kuwait was, at the times that I was there, was not in having these types of attacks of any kind, aerial, IEDs, any kind of insider threats. We weren't dealing with that. Some people were living off base. Honestly, the biggest threat in Kuwait was the insane traffic, which people could get into car accidents and die in. It was just a no-holds-barred traffic situation. The traffic safety was very serious there. But that's the situation in Kuwait. And you would travel between bases in unmarked vehicles as normal, and you would travel to the airport in these vehicles. But they did not have the same security issues. Here in Saudi Arabia, we have secure bases and compounds. The threat levels are not like other nations, but it changes all the time. There are increases and decreases in threat levels that occur. And it's more of a situation of fewer issues, but when the issues occur, they're serious. And you always have to kind of be aware of what's happening around you, your surroundings. You have quite a bit of freedom in Saudi Arabia to be able to leave as a contractor, be able to go to a local mall, local restaurants, and for the most part the experience is peaceful and actually quite welcoming. But you always have to kind of keep your eyes and ears open to what's happening around you, driving, in parking lots, walking. Is someone following you? Is something else happening? Is there a distraction occurring that's getting you to look one way while something else happens another place? Always keeping your eyes open. That has been my experience in Saudi Arabia and in Bahrain. That pretty much covers both Saudi Arabia and Bahrain at the time of this video. Was relatively safe, open, with the ability for contractors to go out and enjoy restaurants, but just always keep wary, keep your eye out on what's happening around you for any reason, whatever you may encounter. Let's talk about working in Europe or working in Asia at the time that this video is being made. This is 2021. There's a lot of contracts that are opening throughout Europe and in Eastern Europe. The former Soviet bloc nations, many contracts are opening. U.S. military forces and other NATO forces are putting bases in many of these countries. Some of the bases might just be small patrol groups or maybe a small armored group or some helicopters. It's just more of a presence more than anything else, which happens all over the world. And contractors, as always, are the continuity on these bases. You go there and you work, you maintain the computer systems, the vehicles, the facilities. You might, if you were doing aviation mechanic in the military, you might get hired on as a aviation mechanic working on these bases as well. That way you maintain that continuity as the military rotates out after so many years or months or whatever they're doing. And so there's a lot of work in Europe, Eastern Europe, and in Asia, specifically in Japan, a lot of work on both air bases, army bases, and on naval bases. And the fields that I just went over is what you can find on these. I can tell you that it's been a long time since I've heard of any significant dangers to soldiers that are stationed in most of Europe and in Asia. However, the reality is now that there are many areas in Europe and in Eastern Europe that are just dealing with civil unrest. Not uncommon at the time of making this video. It's happening even in the West, but it just means that when you are traveling and when you are working in a foreign country, you have to keep that in mind for your own personal safety. Where are you going? Are people aware of where you're going? What's happening there? Check the news, find out what's happening there. Is it a safe place for you to go? Stay out of the cities, in my opinion. Stay out of large cities. Explore the countryside. Go for some nice hikes. See some small towns, sites like that. It's just a really good idea. If you do go into the cities, I would definitely not go alone. I would definitely travel with someone. But again, it's not necessarily a specific threat against contractors or service members, but it's more of just a state of unrest and danger in general that you need to be aware of and you need to identify before you decide where you're going to go for that weekend or for the afternoon when you leave the base facility. There's two other incidents that should be discussed. One is if you're specifically working on a security team. The training that you will have come from, probably with a military background or law enforcement background, private security background with going through private security schools, then going to work in that field, receiving additional training when you get in country. These can be very dangerous jobs, for sure. You're going to be working protecting convoys, protecting checkpoints, protecting specific buildings, and protecting specific people. And that is going to be a job that's going to entail a level of danger, but you will be well trained and armed to protect yourself for those situations. All right? They tend to be very well paying as well. The other to think about is the rise of drone situations in the Middle East. More use of drones are taking place of all sizes, small surveillance drones, larger drones that carry a warhead of some kind on them. This is very real, and it's very real here in Saudi Arabia. I even started a video with one of these drone videos that were taken here in Saudi, taken by a contractor during a drone attack. Those drones are being shot down by Patriot missiles. So it's a very real situation to think about, is the rise of drones. It has added another level of danger to working overseas. However, in the course of a year, let's just say out of the last year that I've been working here, I would say maybe 5 or 6 of these incidents have occurred that have been, and they've been reported in the news. They make worldwide news when they occur. And I don't see that as a significant threat that would make me not take an overseas job. I see the benefits of taking an overseas job and the experience I'm going to gain, the ability to see the world, tax benefits with a high-paying job. I see the advantages outweigh the dangers in that situation. But it is the new world, and the drones are the rise, okay? So that's something to think about. Those are the situations that I have dealt with in my career, the locations where I've been, the realities, the thoughts about Europe and Asia, and the new threats that are emerging. I hope that's been helpful to you, and I hope that gives you a more realistic idea of what the dangers are when you're in country. And don't let them dissuade you, because as I said before, the benefits of taking an overseas contract outweigh the dangers, in my opinion. And I wish you all the best, and we will talk again. Have a good day.